Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you guys are new. I'm very excited for today's video because I'm reaching out for a palette that I haven't filmed with in quite a while. This is the Il Makiage and Kathleen Lights Disco Fox palette. So today's video is going to be kind of a 3-in-1 with this palette, and I'm going to show you how I created the look that I have on my eyes right now. I'm also going to walk you through some alternatives of the shimmer shades in this palette that I personally have in my collection. 4 of them are drugstore, so that's really exciting because this is a very high-end, expensive palette. So if you're wanting to kind of recreate a look out of this palette and you want to try some really dimensional shimmer shades, I'm going to give you some options for those a little bit later in the video. And then finally, we're going to go through and decorate my palette. So if you didn't know, when you purchase this palette, you can pick a sticker set. So this is the sticker set that I chose, and I actually just want to add some of the stickers to the palette because I've been kind of putting it off because for some reason and things like that, I just like put off because I don't want to like regret where I put them. So I've kind of taken some time to have the palette blank. But at the end of this video, we will walk through and add the stickers to the palette. So if that sounds interesting to you, then be sure to stick around for this video. I'm excited to kind of just revisit this palette with you guys and chat about it. So I really hope that you guys enjoy. So let's go ahead and jump in with how I created this look. I'm wanting to do something a little bit more glam. I do already have my eyes primed. I actually used the Shop Miss A Soft Base Nude Eye Primer, and then I set the primer down with my e.l.f. Halo Glow Loose Setting Powder. I'm going to start with the lightest matte shade called Later Days with a large fluffy crease brush. And I'm just putting this in the crease, and I'm going to kind of take my time blending it as sort of a blown out kind of an effect so that it's not too pigmented in the crease quite yet. I really want to build up the depth here, but I'm just going to keep kind of layering that shade. I do actually really like the matte shades in this palette, especially the more neutral ones. I don't always lean into the peach or the more burgundy shade just because I really like this as a neutral palette. But what I really like is that if you put on what kind of feels like a lot, you can really blend it out into nothing. So I've actually really enjoyed the matte shades in this. I find them to be really blendable, and I feel like you can get a pretty glam look in just a matter of minutes with this palette because it's going to be glam, but it's still going to be neutral. And I do feel like it kind of lends itself to being a quicker palette to use, which I really appreciate out of a neutral palette because if I'm reaching for a colorful palette, I'm kind of expecting usually to spend a little bit more time on the look, but sometimes I really want to put a look together that feels, you know, really done up and glam in a little less time. So, you know, I really like having this as an option in my collection, especially for that sort of a look. And I feel like I already built up a good bit of depth for my skin tone just with this lightest shade. I love how buildable these shadows really are. With a slightly smaller crease brush, I'm going to go into this center shade here called Hello Wisconsin. I feel like I always forget to use this matte shade because it has the embossing. I don't know why, I just feel like sometimes I forget to reach into it. But this is one of the more warm options in the palette, and I think I want to go that route today. So I'm just kind of packing this on the outer part of the lid and crease, and then I'm going to blend it in with the previous shade that we put down, Later Days. I'm going to go back in with the first brush I was using. I'm not adding anything else, but I'm just using this to blend it into the crease towards the brow. I do have a little bit of a dry patch on my eyelid right here, so you can probably see that. That's in my experience from using this palette in the past. It's not this palette because yesterday when I did my eyeshadow, it was also kind of patchy right there. So I think my skin is a little bit dry right now with the weather cooling off. So just I wanted to mention that because I typically don't have any patching, but I am going to see if with these shadows I can kind of conceal that. So I'm picking up a little bit more of Hello Wisconsin and I'm packing that kind of where that patchiness was, and then I'll try and blend it that way. So I'm just going back and forth between the two brushes. I'm not really picking up any of Later Days. I'm just picking up a little bit more of Hello Wisconsin and then using the Later Days brush, which was the larger crease brush, just to kind of help blend it. I think that helped a little bit with the patching, but you can still kind of see like where I'm dealing with the dryness, but over on this eye, I don't really feel like it's patchy at all. There's just that little spot on my left eye. Okay, with You're So Vain, I want to pick this shade up on an even smaller fluffy crease brush. This is the next to deepest shade, but it's still a little bit more warm tone. So I want to use this on the very outer portion of my lid. And I'm just going to stamp this shade on both lids before I start blending. So I only have dipped into that shade one time, and I'm spreading the shadow because you really can build these shadows up to be pretty intense, but I want to start a little bit more subtle and then I can build on it if I want to. But I'm trying to kind of blend this in with the other shades without blowing the shade out too much, because I do want it to stay kind of in the outer portions. But I feel like it's a pretty typical like Kathleen look to kind of put a really deep shade on the very outer portions of your lid and then almost make your eye shape a little bit more like round or almond, versus I feel like sometimes for my eyes, I tend to just put like a medium tone shade on the outer portion, so it's not quite as much dimension as I feel like she uses. So I really like to do that, especially lately. I've been really into that sort of a placement between this palette and especially the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. I have been doing that a lot with. When back in with the second brush that we use, I'm just going to continue blending, and I'm just going to go kind of back and forth between all three brushes and blend them out. I'm picking up a little bit more of Hello Wisconsin with the second brush that we used, and I'm just going to make sure that everything is still pretty blended. I am struggling a little bit still on this left eye. The right eye is going pretty well, I would say. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of Later Days. I'll blend that out. And then I'm going to pack on a little bit more of You're So Vain, just to make sure I didn't lose that shade here on the very outer portion. I do suggest using something like the NYX glitter glue for these shadows because, well, for the shimmer shades, because they're a little bit more on the dry side and they're a little bit more glittery. So I definitely want to try and avoid having any fallout onto my face since I've already done my face makeup. And I'm just going to go ahead and put some NYX glitter glue on. Okay, I want to pick up the shade Funky Town, which is the one thing I hate about this packaging I told you guys about, is how the little handle on the packaging is on the left side. So it's actually really hard for a left-handed person to hold this palette in comparison, I feel like, to a right-handed person. But I'm going to pick up this shade called Funky Town, and I'm going to put this almost all over the lid from where this deep shade is, almost to the very inner corner. I want to put one of these lighter shades on the inner portion, but I'm going to start out with Funky Town. And I think I'll use one of the more colorful glitters on the lower lash line, just to kind of show you guys what that looks like. But yeah, this shade is really pretty. I don't always love putting the more medium to deep shimmer shade on, but I do really like the depth that this one gives, especially for a more smoky eye. And I really like how lightweight these glitters are. I kind of consider them more of like a glitter than just a regular metallic shade. Like, they're definitely different than, I would say, most shimmer or metallic shades. I'm really liking the depth of this look right now. It feels very fall to me. Okay, so now I want to pick one of the lighter shades. Part of me actually is like thinking about putting one of these colorful ones on the very inner portion, but I don't know. I feel like I want to put that on the lower lash line. Yeah, I feel like I want to put the purple on the lower lash line. That could be really pretty on the inner portion, but I'm telling you guys, I feel like I always just want to reach for like the true neutrals in this palette. So I'm not sure if I want to go with this like gold shade. I don't think so. I think I want to go lighter than that. So I'm kind of in between the two lightest shades here, which are called Super Freak and the Copa. So these are honestly pretty similar. These are definitely, I would say, the most two similar shades in the entire palette. Like, they don't have a ton of difference. One of them is slightly more gold than the other, but I feel like every now and then I kind of am like, are they though? Like, they're really similar. So, I don't know. They kind of look the same. I think I'm going to go with the Copa, because it has slightly more of like a pink tone to it. So I feel like if I put the purple on the lower lash line, it will kind of complement this shade. But I don't think you could really pick a wrong shade here. And I might go ahead and put the other one in the inner corner. I'm gonna try and kind of blend this in with Funky Town and go in between the two. I kind of don't mind that the two shades are so similar, but only because they're kind of like my most used shimmer shades in the palette. So if I ever were to hit pan in one, then I wouldn't feel like I need to stop using it so that I don't completely use it up and have no other option. But that's kind of a silly reason to be okay with having them both, I feel like. So I will go ahead with the shade Super Freak, which is the one that I did not use. And I'll put this on the inner corner. I'm going to use a brush for that. See, I didn't put NYX glitter glue here, and there is a good bit of fallout. So this is definitely not a formula that you're going to want to use without something underneath it. It's a little bit too dry of a formula, but it's kind of hard to explain. I feel like I don't have a ton of formulas like this. Typically would not go through the trouble of putting NYX glitter glue on the lower lash line, but I don't want a bunch of fallout from the purple shade. So I'm actually going to try and put a little bit of this right under the lower lash line. All right, I'm going to pick up a little bit of Dream On, which is the shimmery purple shade. I don't love that on the lower lash line. All right, I'm kind of blending the inner portion of the lower lash line with a brush that I put on the inner corner shadow with. I didn't pick up anything else though, but I do think I'll pick up a little bit more of Funky Town, the deepest shimmer. Kind of put this on the outer portion of the lid, like the lower lash line. Just kind of help like smoke that out some. All right, I think that brush had black on it, so I don't like the under eye like this, so I'm actually just going to take that off. I don't really like this at all. Yeah, I just don't feel like I'm very into like a pop of color on the lower lash line. So instead, with the very first brush that we use, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit more of Later Days. I don't know the names of these shades because they're on the back of the palette, but I'm picking up a little bit more of Later Days. I'm going to pinch the brush and just run this along the lower lash line. I think I kind of just prefer that whenever the lid is just so smoky. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add the Tarte Maneater mascara. Okay, so here's how the look turned out all completed. I added some mascara. I used the Tarte Maneater mascara, and I actually really like how it looks. It's very dramatic, which is kind of what I was going for. I typically just use this palette like every day and kind of make more neutral looks. So I just kind of wanted to use it again for a more bold look. But I want to go ahead and kind of add the stickers to my palette and decorate it. And also talk about some kind of alternatives to especially the shimmer shades in this palette, because this palette is extremely expensive. And I think that the formula of these shimmer shades is honestly really unique, but I do have a couple comparable shades in my collection to these, especially single shadows. So I just kind of want to share that with you guys. That way, if you're wanting to try a formula that's a little bit similar to this, maybe you could just pick up one or two shadows that are single shadows and kind of get the same feeling, but spend a lot less than like the $80 that this palette will cost you. So yeah, let's go ahead and start out with kind of some alternative shades, and then let's go ahead and decorate my palette with the stickers. So as I mentioned in the tutorial of this video, the shimmers in this are really unique, honestly, to anything that I've tried, especially in another palette. They're a little bit more on the dry side, but they're still just gorgeous. They're a little bit more, I guess, like flaky, which is kind of what that dry formula is going to provide you. And I think that they're pretty unique as far as something that you typically would see in a palette. If I had to compare them to something that I have swatched before, I'd probably compare them to something like the Patrick Ta Major Dimensions palettes. I've never owned them, but I have swatched them before in stores. These are highly reflective and very glittery. They are honestly really, really pretty on the lids, especially if you use a NYX glitter glue. But even without, here's just some kind of standard swatches. They're still really, really reflective and very shimmery. So that being said, in my own personal collection, I don't really have a ton of palettes where I feel like the formula of them is the exact same. I would say the closest that I have would be my Huda Nude Light palette from Huda Beauty, of course. Especially, you know, we've kind of got the purple shade here and then like the rose gold shade. They're going to be a little bit more similar to what is in the Kathleen Lights palette. So I kind of wanted to just show you those. The shades in here are, again, a little bit more on the dry, almost a little bit flaky at times, sort of a formula here. So I've got the purple shade from that palette, which again is pretty reflective here. And then we have the rose gold. Now, the tones are not the exact same. Let me swatch the rose gold one from the Kathleen Lights palette. You know, the shades are not the exact same, but they're pretty similar as far as just they're a purple and a rose gold. But the shimmers in this are quite similar, and they're going to give you a pretty similar effect as far as the reflectiveness goes. So out of all of my palettes, I would say that the formula in this particular palette is the most similar. The Mercury Retrograde palette has a couple of shades that I feel like are a little bit more of that dry shimmer type formula, so they're going to be kind of the same, but I would say this one is the most similar. But that's really the extent, I would say, of like the palettes that I have shades that are similar to. I've got a lot more in the single shades. So I'll start out with the single shade that I think is the most similar to this type of a formula from Kathleen Lights and Il Makiage. This is the Flower Beauty Chrome Crush Pressed Pigment. This is a drugstore product. This is only about $11 or $12. They recently did have it on sale at Ulta in their fall beauty sale for under $10. But I have mine in the shade Quartz, and I really love this product. I'm so glad I picked it up. They've got about 8 shades, but I would say this is 100% the most similar thing in my whole collection to any of these. So I think you can probably tell just by looking at it that the texture is going to be quite similar. This one is a little bit more bouncy. If you press your finger into the shades from the palette, they're a little bit more firm. But when you press your finger into the single shade, it is a little bit bouncy feeling. So I don't know, it doesn't really affect, I would say, the formula too much, but I think it lends itself to have a slight less amount of fallout when you use it. So that could be a plus, actually. It might be like a hair less reflective, but you can really build it up. And on the eyes, I really just think the dimension of the shimmers looks so similar on your lids. So that's kind of how you can see the comparison here. But I think that's going to be my most similar, but I'll show you a couple other ones so that you can see them. I would say the Ulta Beauty Bouncy Eyeshadow is actually going to give you a similar effect as well. I don't know, I feel like the bouncy single shades especially, I'll kind of actually talk about these two together. This one is discontinued, but if you happen to have it, you know, you might want to reach for it. This is the Essence Melted Chrome eyeshadow, and then, like I said, the Ulta Beauty Bouncy eyeshadow. I've got the Ulta one in Buttercream and the Essence one in Ironic. So the Ulta one has a lot less of a base to it, but the amount of shimmer that this adds to a look is honestly just so beautiful. And you can put it over any other shade and it's just going to add a lot of glitter to it. The swatch is going to be, you know, a good bit different than the swatches from the palette from Il Makiage, but I'm telling you, just the dimension of the glitter is going to be what's similar here. And I just feel like if you're wanting something special, I feel like that's kind of what this palette gives. It's a little bit of a special formula in my opinion, and I feel like these single shadows also do that. And especially since so many of these are drugstore, the Essence Melted Chrome and Ironic is going to be the most similar to a Funky Town, which you saw me put on the outer edge. This one is so reflective. I'm so upset that they discontinued this. I don't want to talk about it for too long because if you don't have it, you know, I don't want to make you like feel like you're missing out, because like you are, but you can't get it. So I don't want to like talk about it too much, you know? So yeah, let me swatch Funky Town from the palette. This one's a little bit deeper, but I love both of them. I mean, they're not the same shade. I'm not trying to like dupe the palette here in particular, but I just kind of want to show you some more special shades. If you don't want to be buying an $80 palette, I totally understand. Okay, another one that is so affordable. This is the Ulta Beauty Lustrous Foil Eyeshadow. I have mine in Rose Gold Leaf. This one is very messy, okay? So keep that in mind. It is so chunky. I'm going to be very careful not to spill this on my rug. Okay, so I'm just actually going to pick some up from the little lid that comes to protect the actual shades. But as you can see from the swatch, I mean, it is a chunky glitter. And I just picked it up on the wrong hand, but I'll swatch it here next to the palette. So this one is highly reflective. I mean, it literally looks like gold leafing. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty insane. And you can kind of just see the level of shine here. It's honestly like more glittery and more impactful than the palette. So it's definitely more dusty though. So keep that in mind because this is quite messy, but I'm telling you guys, this is so mind-blowing. I feel like from the drugstore, and really no one talks about these. Kelly Gooch mentioned this, and I had seen it in the store, and I wasn't so sure about how it would perform, but after I saw her using it, I just went and picked it up because I think I was already ordering some stuff from there. But yeah, I really like this one, and honestly, as you can see here, it's even more impactful than some of these shades. The last one I wanted to mention is actually the newest single shadow to me. I ordered 2 new shadows from Phytosurgeons. I'll have a video coming out on that if it's not already out, but this is the Wild Wisteria shade. This had been discontinued from them, but they brought it back in a limited stock. I'm not sure if it's still in stock or not, but it is a very pretty purple color. So I wanted to kind of compare it to the purple to see, you know, kind of how those shimmers matched up. So this is a very dry formula. If you've never tried Phytosurgeons before, this is unlike anything I've ever tried before. I find that I really have to dig my finger into it to pick up the shade. I'm assuming it's something about how, you know, when you kind of use more pressure, like the warmth of your finger is kind of warming up the formula. So in comparison here is the Il Makiage one, and then here's the Phytosurgeons. You can tell the Phytosurgeons looks a little bit more like oily, I guess, or just more, not creamy, but yeah, like more oily, I feel like. And then the Il Makiage Kathleen Lights one, of course, is just more dry. Like it's a very dry formula. And again, the purple shade in here is called Dream On. I wouldn't say that the Phytosurgeons one is quite as shimmery, which I don't think is what they're going for. So let me swatch the 2 here. Here's the Il Makiage, and then here is the Phytosurgeons. So it just is a lot more of like a liquid. You can see it kind of chunked up a little bit. I think these are just meant to be a little bit more of like a wash of color. In the sun, they're very glittery, but they're not quite as impactful as these really extremely glittery, shimmery shades from the Il Makiage palette. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to share some different options for you guys. If you're really wanting to look for something special to add to your collection in the shimmer realm, I would really lean for you to get a single shadow from a drugstore brand that I've mentioned. Number 1 would be my Flower Beauty suggestion, and then after that, I feel like it would actually be the Lustrous Foil from Ulta just because it's so impactful. But I'd have to give it to Flower just because it's a little bit easier to use. It's not as messy. So that's kind of what I'm thinking when I'm looking at them, because I understand like the Disco Fox palette is so expensive. So I really just wanted to kind of highlight the palette itself, but also highlight some really pretty shadows because you don't have to break the bank to get some pretty glittery shadows. I did compare these shadows to the Patrick Ta palette, which is like $72. So, you know, it's slightly cheaper, but it's still like super high end. So if you weren't wanting to get this palette, but it really caught your eye, maybe you have some of these singles in your collection, or you already have other single shadows and you can just kind of play around with them. I really feel like it's just the glitter dimension of this palette that is so special, and it does make it really fun to reach for. I mean, I feel like the look on my eyes is just really dimensional, and I can just really appreciate that. So I do really like this, but I wanted to kind of share some alternatives. So with that being said, let me just go ahead and take over to my vanity and let's add the stickers to this because I have put it off for way too long. I have enjoyed having it be blank, but I'm really excited to add in the stickers and just kind of customize it a little bit. Okay, so here's the blank palette. You can slide the plastic piece on top over and I guess completely off so that you can decorate it. So we're just gonna go for it. I kind of have an idea of where I want to put everything. I'm not planning to use all of them, but let's just do it. Okay, so the first thing I know, I want to put the disco ball sticker on top of the disco ball, just to kind of add like a little bit of dimension. Okay, yeah, I like that. I think that's cute. Like just right on top of the disco ball kind of outline. Now, I will be honest, I don't really love this one. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to use that one. So I'm just going to kind of use the other ones, I guess. So I think I'll use the peace sign. And I was thinking about putting that one right here. So I'm going to do that. I was originally thinking about putting the Kathleen Lights sticker. This is so hard to show you guys because of the light. But I was originally thinking about putting the Kathleen Lights sticker up here, but I'm kind of thinking about layering it over her name here like I did the disco ball. That might be a little bit too like matchy-matchy. So let me think about it. Okay, I think I'm gonna put Disco Time here in this blank because it's called the Disco Fox palette. I wish that they would have had it say Disco Fox because I would have liked to have the name of the palette on it. Okay, so I'm gonna add this one, kind of add an angle here. Yeah, I like this so far. I think that's cute. So I think I'm just gonna add all the little gemstone looking ones on here and then see if I wanna add her signature or not. Okay, I think that's good. I don't know that I'm gonna add the Kathleen Lights sticker on top just because I did the disco ball already layered and I don't really know that I want to do that again. I just don't really love the shoe sticker. I don't know. Like, I guess you could just stick it on top of the shoe, but I don't know. I don't really like the foot. So the Peace Love, I think I'll probably leave that one off too. And yeah, I think I'm going to leave her signature one off just because it's already on here. So I think that's going to be it. I really like how that actually turned out. So that's exciting. I think it's actually really cute. And yeah, I wish this said Disco Fox is the only thing just because I think it makes more sense, but I get it. They wanted to just kind of like have options, but I don't know. I think that was kind of cute and I liked it. And I'm glad I didn't put them all on there. I kind of like just having these, but I'll set this aside in case I decide to add her signature on it, but for now, I think that's going to be the entire decorations. But that's going to be it for today's video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed. If you did, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up and also consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more content from me. Be sure to let me know in the comments if you have any suggestions or requests that you want to see from my channel. I'd really appreciate it. But with that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.